Aloha mai kako. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Moana Nui podcast, Crescent City Monsters and the creator who made them. Before we get started, please take a moment to share this video, hit the like button, tag a friend, and let's help some family and friends find some great creative stories by some amazing creators. Tonight, we are joined by Newton Lilavois, who is a creator and writer of one of my absolute favorite indie comics, Crescent City Monsters. I was attracted and impressed by the art style and the story angle. There's a perception by non comic fans or those new to comics that the stories are all about superheroes and mass vigilantes and people in capes. But one of the things I love the most about Crescent City Monsters is that it proves that superhero misconception wrong. Uh, Newton has created a rich universe of monsters and magic. He's a leader in the indie creator community, and I can't wait to introduce you to him and talk a little bit about his work. So let me bring him on. Aloha, Newton. Welcome to the Moana Nui podcast.
Hey, Moana. Thank you for having me. That was a great intro.
Oh no, I mean I'm a huge fan. So like this is amazing for me. I have been following Crescent City Monsters since the beginning and patiently waiting, for each issue as it comes out. And I was kind of reflecting a little bit today and just realized like, wow, we just did like number 3 like not too long ago. It was like earlier this year, and you're already coming out with number 4. So I'm like, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because originally I had only planned to do one Kickstarter. In fact, in the last Kickstarter, I said that I was going to slow down and only do like one Kickstarter a year. But then, COVID happened and, change of plans.
Absolutely. Um, I'm really excited about it, and it's quite an accomplishment to me to do two Kickstarters in a year because it takes a whole lot of effort. Which we'll talk about that a little bit, but
Oh, yeah.
um, let's start off with like tell our listeners a little bit about yourself. What's your origin story, and how did you get started?
Yeah, so I was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Came to the States when I was about 5 years old. Grew up in Brooklyn, New York. Currently live in the Bronx. Like a lot of comic book creators, I was into comics really young. Um, I was reading comics, I guess, regularly at the age of 11. And I loved it so much that I started creating my own comic book. So, there I was in 5th and 6th grade, just drawing comics and selling my comics to my classmates. So, I love doing that. But I had two passions, right? Creating comics and programming, computer programming. So, as I grew older, it kind of made more sense to to lean towards computer programming, because at that time, I knew there were people who made a living creating comics, but to me, it just didn't seem like a real thing.
Yeah.
So, and plus, I came from old school Haitian parents, and they're like, you know, explaining them that you want to be a comic book creator wouldn't really work out. So um, yeah, so I leaned towards computer programming, but then as I got older, I still had ideas in my head just floating around, and I was always writing too. Like in high school, I took creative writing classes. I won a few contests in high school, a few writing contests in high school. So writing was always a thing, but it was always in the back burner. And then like I said, I always had stories in my mind. Then when I started getting into Kickstarter, uh, I was initially backing tech projects, right? Because I was, little gadgets and stuff. So I was like, oh, this is cool. But then I saw there was a section for comic book creators. So I went in and checked it out, and I was like, oh, okay. And I purchased my first Kickstarter comic book. In fact, let me see if I have it here. Yeah, here it is. Hold on. So this is it here.
Shadow Eyes.
Shadow Eyes, yeah. So it's a really great book, and when I was looking into it, the people who created it, it was by Sophie Campbell and Ern Watson. But the publishing company behind it was Iron Circus Comics, and the president or the owner is Spike. And she had produced this PDF, and it talked about how to get into Kickstarter as a comic book creator. And once I saw that, that's when it was like, that's when the seed was planted in my head. You know what? I think I want to create my own comic, because now I saw like there was a path to doing it that
Right.
was kind of laid out a little bit in this PDF, and I was like, okay, let's do this. So so I decided to pursue my childhood dreams of creating comic books.
That's so awesome. I love that. You were, especially where it kind of draws on, like some dreams and some aspirations that you had as a kid that never really went away, right? It was always in the back of your mind, like, how can I do this? This is something I'm really passionate about, and just finding a way to make this happen. It's one of the things I love about the Kickstarter platform, is because it gives people opportunity to give their ideas a try, and that, I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's the great thing about the platform. I mean, when you think about it, if you didn't have Kickstarter, right? So you'd either have to like save enough money and wait to do whatever project you wanted, right? Take out a bank loan, which most people, probably don't even qualify for, right? Or ask money from friends and family, which, most people probably don't have that rich uncle that they could, borrow, $2,000-3,000 from. So Kickstarter is a really great alternative to those other sources of income.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've used Kickstarter as well, and it's been amazingly helpful, and it just helps you get your project out a lot quicker, and it allows you to just test the waters creatively and just kind of see like what people want, what they don't want, and helps you to develop your audience and talk to people who you know may not always feel reflected in the other stories that might be out there right now. So I want to go back a little bit and talk about. You mentioned that you have Haitian Creole roots, and
Mhm.
that you were born in Haiti.
Mhm.
How do you incorporate your cultural background into your work?
So Crescent City Monsters takes place in New Orleans, right? And there's a lot of cultural connection between New Orleans and Haiti, and historical connections. Um, so it was a little bit, so it was easy to do that. So especially with the voodoo aspect of it. So New Orleans voodoo is a little different than Haitian voodoo. Is not exactly the same, but they share a lot of the same things. Like they have a Baron Samedi, right, and so do we. So I incorporated some of the Haitian voodoo loas into Crescent City Monsters, because I wanted to really make them a lot cooler than than I've ever seen on TV or even other comic books. Because the idea of the loas are really cool, and um, it's really interesting because loas really they kind of possess you in order to um, be here on Earth, right? They're not like, some people call them gods, but they're not really gods. They're more like spirits. Um, so so I think that aspect's a little is really interesting. The fact that you have to have a spirit that connects to a human, and have that interaction in order to be in this world. So I wanted to kind of play on that too. You kind of saw that in the third issue where Baron Samedi is writing. It's called writing sometimes. Um, uh, his the French word is a cheval, a horse. But riding his horse, which is Callie, and interacting with her in the real world. So and they kind of play off each other. So even though he's this powerful Loa, he still kind of needs a human accomplish certain things. So I kind of like playing with that aspect of it. So yeah, things like that I enjoy throwing around, and also Crescent City Monsters. I kind of with that story I introduced the idea of like Creole magic, which is a blend of magics, right? So it's the European so the uh, New Orleans culture has Creole, right? And Creole basically is a mixture of European, African, and Indian culture. So I wanted to capture that mixture. So there's a lot of different characters. So besides the voodoo loas, you also have gods or people who are part of like Norse mythology and things like that. So I wanted a little mixture and kind of incorporate that into the story.
Yeah, I really love that about, like, it's one of the really interesting aspects to me about the story, especially because like I don't know if it's just me, but traditionally it's been like it has a negative vibe about it. The whole concept of voodoo and the Western understanding of like what it is, right? Like witch doctors and giving everything such a negative connotation. Um, like two kind of movies that come to mind are kind of older ones, but Skeleton Key was like one of those where I was like, oh, this is an interesting concept. Where it was kind of like body snatching in a way, I guess, like spirits that lived on and jumped into, kind of talking towards what you had mentioned before, like the spirits living on through like other humans, and that was like their way of immortality, right? Keeping immortality. Um, so that was definitely interesting to me. And then one that was kind of funny. I mean, not really funny, but Marked for Death kind of, I don't know, it was, I don't know if you saw that movie. It's like an old Steven Seagal movie, and it had like, I think it was the Jamaicans though. Like they were like drug dealers, and it kind of had some voodoo aspects, like with the bones and things like that. And so it kind of like touched the surface, but
Mhm.
like with Crescent City Monsters, it like draws you into that world. Like it's so descriptive. The art by Gian is like so amazing, because I'm usually not a fan of like non-color comics, like manga and things like that.
Yeah.
But with this one, I was like, okay, you got me. I'm here. It's just so amazing. It's just like you guys make a great team between storytelling and artistry. Um, can you talk a little bit more about um, like the dynamic between you and John, and like how does having such an amazing artist like emphasize the way the storytelling comes out? Like, because you have a script, and then like I feel like the artist sometimes can push you to even write even beyond like what you may have initially had in mind. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, you're right. The artist does definitely have a big influence on the story. Actually, well, so I can say, personally, Gene has a big influence on the story because of his art style. Yeah, and I like to start off by saying, I'm really fortunate to have found Gene. He's an absolutely monster when it comes to artwork. He's the amazing Gian Carlo Bernal. So yeah, I'm really fortunate to have found him. And as far as our process, it's and when I first started the comic book, I was really ready to go. So all I had really was an outline in my head. I didn't even have the outline written down. It was just an outline in my head, and I was like, okay, let's. I was like, if I wait till I finish the story, I'll never get this done, this comic book out. So because I would start writing and just keep writing, and I would never be happy with how it's progressing. So I was like, all right, we're gonna do this 3 pages at a time. And so I would give Gene 3 pages of the script at a time, and then once he finished, I'd give him the next one. And when he sent me that first page, I was just blown away. I was like, wow. And when I saw his artwork, it started like sparking my imagination because I'm a really visual person.
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw his artwork, I started seeing the story more towards his art style. So like I'll picture things in the way he draws things. So so the story, kind of changed a little bit, because I initially had these scenes in my head, and they were going to play out a certain way, but based on Gian's artwork, some of that changed. So he is his art style and his artwork and just the way we work together really just really affects the book. I mean, like I really I think we have a synergy. I feed off his artwork and he feeds off the script. So and I think it really works that way. And you can tell that he really enjoys drawing the story because he takes a lot of time and effort into what he's doing. Sometimes I'll look at the panel and see the stuff that he puts in. It's like he'll put in like little stuff in there that I'm like, oh, okay, I see what he did here, and he's very cinematic when it comes to drawing. So that's pretty amazing too. So not only is he a great artist, but it's like he's in his he's a genius when it comes to art because he'll like take a scene and like turn it a certain way, and you're like, oh, what made him think of doing that angle? It's like, and it's appropriate angle too. It's like amazing. It's like, he should be a director. So
Absolutely.
So yeah, it was so Gian's artwork is just amazing.
Yep, I'm definitely a fan, and I can't wait to see the next issue. Let's see. So I want to circle back a little bit, back to the voodoo part, and talk about like how did you go about researching for your project? Was your knowledge of it like were you raised with voodoo beliefs, or was that something that you had to pursue and develop more for the story?
Yeah, I had to do research. So my family is they're straight Catholics. They don't really practice voodoo. In fact, my parents never even talked about voodoo when I was growing up. So I didn't really have any like personal insight into it. So I had to do some research, which is kind of funny being Haitian because in Haiti a lot of people practice voodoo. So it's a common thing. So it's not. But yeah, so I had to do research. But it wasn't that difficult. And it was something I enjoyed because during the research, you you see more of the African connection because a lot of it just spills back to West Africa. So you feel a little bit more connected to Africa as you're like, yeah, okay, because it's not like voodoo just appeared out of Haiti. It was it was something that the Haitian form of voodoo was sort of just it was changed and merged with the Catholic religion along with the African religion. So it came from somewhere. It's not like we invented a lot of the aspects of voodoo.
Yeah, and I mean that's natural, and it's interesting to see how like culture evolves, or religion or beliefs evolve with the changing of the times, and the influences, like the Catholic influences you mentioned, and how your family was Catholic, because I was raised the same way, right? So like this is definitely not something my parents would have taught me, because Christians view it as like, oh, spiritual possession is bad, it's evil, it's a demon. And I'm just like, okay, but I don't really.
Yeah, and but when you look at it, a lot of it still carries on. Like you can't really totally get rid of it. Like when you go, because when Catholic church are a little so they're different than regular church because and I didn't realize that because when I used to go to church, it was Catholics are like this. Everything is like planned, and you do this or this, and you say this after that, and and so I remember one time I went to I forget what denomination it was, but I went to it was a black church, and I was like, whoa! I was like, I was like, I think this is a little bit more my speed. I was like, people like, clapping and singing and dancing. And then, then when I saw someone catching the Holy Spirit, I was like, okay, I was like, that's definitely from, that's
From your
definitely from
African
Africa.
roots.
I was like, that definitely is something that came from the motherland. So like little things like that, like catching the spirit is um is definitely something that that came from our ancestors. And
Hmm.
so there's always traces of it somewhere. You can't really totally get rid of it. So that's one good aspect, but the other aspect is still like you kind of touched on, as even though I was raised as a Catholic, I still respect a lot of religions. And
Hmm.
Voodoo is a religion. And so and there are aspects to it that people should just really kind of look into, and kind of see like, okay, maybe certain things about it might not be for you, but if you study and look into it, you'll see that, especially if you look at it, you'll see it has some connections to some of your ancestors, or
Yes.
the beliefs of your ancestors, which is really important.
Yes.
Because you religion is a big cultural thing. So it affects how you think. Yeah, it's I don't even get down road too
Yeah.
much. In fact, let me just say one more thing about it. I remember I was discussing voodoo with a coworker of mine. This guy is like super woke. I mean, he was woke before the word woke was. This guy, he studied African culture like to the utmost. He knew West Africa. He knew East African culture. So um, because both cultures, a lot of people, they'll focus on like Egyptian culture mostly,
Mhm.
or they'll focus on the West African culture mostly. But this guy knew about both cultures. And I remember I was telling him, I was like, well, I could see why they were able to Haitians were able to hide the fact that they were practicing voodoo from the slave owners, because there's so much there's such a there's a big connection, because Catholics, they had saints, which the which Haitians kind of just hid the lowers in it, or merged the lowers in it. So for every correspondence, they matched it up with an lower. So an African spirit. So I was like, it kind of like, I was like, it was easy for them to hide it. He was like, well, he said, well, how do you know? He was like, don't you know they took that from Africa? And we it was like, that's why it's easy. He's like, and then he started kind of breaking it down to me. Really deep guy. He's like that's why it was easy to assimilate it, because a lot of it was already taken from Africa. And he was kind of breaking it down. But yeah, that's just another rabbit hole to get into. But
Yeah, I was gonna say, I said, I could go down that rabbit hole, but I don't want to like cause any kind of friction about about religion, because that can be a very touchy subject. But I will say that even in like Hawaiian culture, we have very similar concept to the loa, which is basically different spirits for that represent like different aspects of life. So you have like the god of a fire, the god of water, war, different aspects, and then like giving tributes to the different those offerings or whatever you want to call that, in tribute and respect to those gods. And we also have what kind of like the origin, and then like how people like descend from those gods, and how like you were playing with the spirit riding the human, very similar is like um like how we have like what could be like, I guess, demigods, where they have like a human form but they also have an animal form. um
okay.
and just the kind of duality and connection between the physical world and the spiritual world. So yeah, absolutely. It was another reason why I liked that you
So let me ask you. So what did you think about that Disney movie? No, was it Disney or Pixar? Moana.
So Moana was good. I mean, it was good, but um like anything, right? It's in general, it's very I loved it because number one, I felt seen, right? Like it's representing Pacific Islander culture. It's incorporating it. So it definitely made me feel emotional about that movie. Of course, it's my name, so I'm gonna love it. No, but I mean, but culturally, they basically took different aspects of different Polynesian cultures
Mhm.
and incorporated them. Like the village itself is representative, um, has a lot of Samoan and Tongan influence in it. I mean, but if you look throughout Pacific Islander cultures, there's a lot of commonalities there too, because it's just like with Africans and Afro Caribbeans, it's all the people go back to the same origins.
Yeah.
What really makes you different is like where you stopped along the journey, right?
Mhm.
Um, and unfortunately, um, a lot of that journey is tied to slavery because there was a Polynesian slave trade too. A lot of people don't know that. It's called blackbirding, and
Okay.
so kind of the epicenter in the Pacific Islands was Fiji. So yeah, basically, the slave owners and the slavers here in the States, once that was quote unquote outlawed, which really wasn't, they took their activities into the Pacific and perpetuated it there. So um, when you look at different Polynesian cultures, there are still a lot of commonalities in the culture and beliefs, even in language. Lots of similarities between Hawaiian and Tahitian. And that, because a lot of our origins tie back into Tahiti, and that's where our people came from. And then if you go back, you go back, and it ties back into like East Asia, and then of course you go East Asia, and then goes all the way back to Africa. We all know this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I like the movie, absolutely love it. But I want to see more, right? Like, let's
Okay.
do more.
Yeah, 'cause I
I would
wanted
like
to
to
see as
see
well.
more actual authentic influence into it. Like, can we bring in some creators that are actually from the culture? Dive a little bit more in depth into those aspects of the culture because they what I did love though is the relationship between Moana and her Tututala, which is basically very true for Polynesian cultures, is that children often have really strong connections with their grandparents because that was the grandparents um, impart the cultural knowledge onto the children. They
Okay.
spend a lot of time with the grandparents. Now it's like these new age people. I don't feel like we respect the elders or take advantage and like really sit with them. Like kids now, I don't know that they do that for whatever the reason might be, whether it be families being separated into different areas and not really having that close knit community anymore. Um, but I that was one of the things that I really loved about the movie is her connection to her grandmother. So, and then when she transitioned and she became,
Oh yeah.
the stingray, and
Yeah, that was a cool scene.
yeah, absolutely, I love that. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so let's see. Um, so Crescent City Monsters incorporates monsters, of course, and it also takes place in the '60s. Why did you choose that particular decade for your setting for your story?
Well, believe it or not, the first issue, the second issue was actually going to be the first issue. Like when
Okay.
I first thought of the idea, it was going to start in modern time.
Uh huh.
But as I was developing the character, um, I wanted him to be as uncomfortable and suffer as much as possible. So I thought, I was like, hey, you know what? Um, let's start the story from way back in the time, period where that's so far from this time period, but not too far that he that if he that he that if he I guess sleeps or is animated and comes back, he's totally lost in this new world. So and then most of the people that he knew would be gone anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, all right, I'm gonna push it back. And I was doing some research. Originally, I was going to make it, I think, in the 1950s. But as I was doing my research, I was like, you know what, 1960s was turned out better in terms of like what was going on with the civil rights era and stuff. So, and at the same time, I wanted to kind of do like a reflection of what was going on now. You know, like I wanted to show that like what we're seeing now is just was mirrored like back then, so that it's not so because a lot of times you have people who are like they kind of like deny that police brutality ever happens. You know, like they're like, oh, you know, it's a one-off kind of thing. you know, so I wanted to, so I wanted to push it back then because I wanted to people to acknowledge, like, okay, yeah, you know, and during this time, this is what happened, right? And you know, to think that it's going to take like only like one or two generations to go away is not really realistic, right? Because in the 60s you had racist people, right? Those racist people are still alive today. Yeah. You know what I mean? A lot of them are still alive. They had children, right? And they affect what their children is thinking, right? If they're racist, their children may not necessarily be racist, but they'll grow up with a prejudiced mindset, right? Mm-hmm. And their children. So, like, to think that, okay, all of it went away after you know, the Civil Rights Act was passed, it is not realistic. You know, because it's gonna carry on for at least 3-4 generations before, you know, the way you view Black people is changed, right? It's not going to change over a generation. It's not going to change over 2 generations. So I want people to think about, like, okay, that even though that seemed like it was a long time ago, it really isn't that long ago. Like I said, there are people alive, still alive, who was around that era. So I wanted to kind of reflect that what was happening then and now, you know, to kind of mirror things. So unfortunately, I flash forward the story. You know, I didn't really spend too much time in the 60s, but you know, something that definitely I've been thinking about going back to, maybe doing like some background stories with Jonas when he's, you know, when he's 19, you know, throwing a flashback here and there, you know.
Yeah, I absolutely love that you played with the timelines, because when I read the first issue and I loved it, and then I went to the second one, I was like, wait, what happened? Like, oh, I see what he's doing. Okay.
Yeah, I was nervous about that because when the first issue came out, everyone was like, oh man, I love the fact that it's, you know, starts in 1963 and the artwork matches the noir. Then I was a little nervous, like, oh no. I was like, I'm, you know, and you know, because I knew ahead of time I was going to flash forward, and I was like kind of nervous. I was like, man, how are people going to take the fact that it's no longer in 1963? Are they still going to, you know, like the story? You know, I was really nervous about that because, like I said, people love the fact that you know, Gene's art style and the noir, and it kind of matched with the time. So, but people seem to really like issue 2 and issue 3, so I guess it wasn't a problem. You know?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that I love about being an indie creator, is that as you're creating your story and you're getting that fan feedback, right? And it's like, okay, well, this is my IP. I can do whatever I want with it. I don't have to ask anybody, you know, if they like that. Well, let me do like a short, or, you know, like develop this other part of the story, you know, and then just further enrich the universe. So I'm glad that I heard that you said that you might write some background stuff, because that would be dope.
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of touched on that too. That's one of the things I like about being an indie creator. So you can, like, even though I was nervous that people were gonna if whether or not they're gonna like if I flash forward. Ultimately, it's up to me, right? Like I can take that chance. I can take that risk. Say, hey, um, I'm not gonna keep it in the 19 because one of my brothers, um, when he found out that I was gonna flash forward, he was like, maybe you should keep in the 60s a little bit longer. Da, da, da. But I was like, nah, that wasn't really the plan. So, um, things like that, like you knowing that, okay, this is your story. You're the one who's gonna decide where it goes, and you're the one who makes the decisions. Whether those decisions are good or bad, ultimately your decisions, and that's one of the great things about being an indie creator because everything you do is up to you. You're the one in control because like in my regular 9 to 5 job, it's a collaborative effort, right? I can't just do everything. I can't do anything I want my way. We work as a team, so sometimes you have to make compromises. You have to listen to other people's idea, which is okay, But then I have this on the flip side where everything is just up to me, which is great, because it's like it's scary too because you can fall flat on your face, in public, it's like like oh man, the story was going great until he did this, so it's like so there's always the fact that you can fall flat on your face, but I I still rather enjoy like everything being in control and deciding what gets done. So I think that to me that's one of the great thing about being an indie creator. You get to do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of going off of that, what has been your scariest experience as a creator?
My scariest experience. I guess I guess really my first Kickstarter. That was that was my because it's the first time you're doing a Kickstarter. You don't know if you're gonna succeed. You don't really know what to expect, even though we're students of Tyler James Comics launch, and we have a ton of information available. You haven't experienced it, so you don't really know what's gonna happen. So that was the scariest thing because even after it's over, you're like, oh wow, I made it, and it's like, now what? Now I have to fulfill. So it's like now you have to figure out, not that it's like rocket science, but at the same time, you like have to do research, make sure that you don't end up losing your shirt because you miscalculated your Kickstarter expenses. So things like that, I guess that was the scariest thing. Luckily, I'm glad that was the scariest thing because that everything else I pretty much enjoy. Things Kickstarters I always get nervous at. They always make me nervous. They always freak me out. It's always I'm not sure why it always plays with my mind, but anything else, I enjoy. Yeah, and it's amazing too because I just this year I did my first panel. It was in January, and usually in public I'm horrible at. I get so nervous. Like I remember I was at a company retreat. I was so bad. Like we had to present at a company retreat. My presentation was so bad. Like there was a guy who stuttered. His presentation was better than mine. I mean, it was like that's how bad my presentation was. So like I, speaking in front of people makes me really nervous. But this year, speaking in the panel, I was okay. I was on stage. I was a little nervous, but I was okay. So that even that wasn't that scary. I guess it's because I enjoy a lot of it. If I didn't enjoy it, I'd probably be scared shitless, like sitting on the stage, but you know, no, I was like, I guess that's the thing that changes things. When you're doing something that you enjoy, the fear doesn't hold on to you as much.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. Everything, all of the above. Got a question from Michael Watson. Why did you choose black and white for your book?
So I was a big fan of Robert Kirkman's Walking Dead series, the comic book series, before the TV series came out. I like the TV series too, but I was a real big fan of the book, and that's in black and white. And basically, Crescent City Monsters is a zombie story. I mean, you can't really see that's a zombie story yet, but that's where the idea kind of came in. So I was like, oh, I want to do my I want to do my own zombie story. It was like, but I want to do it my way. Um, and then in The Walking Dead was black and white. I was like, okay, I want this book to be in black and white too. But the one thing that I didn't plan though is how dope Gian's grayscale was, because originally I was like, okay, this book is gonna be in black and white. Do you think you can do like black and white and The Walking Dead? So I sent him a couple of samples of like Walking Dead pages, like I emailed him, and he was like, "Yeah, sure." But when he sent me back his version of it, I was just blown away. I was like, "Man, this is," I was like, "Wow, this is incredible. This is next level stuff." I that was really surprising. I always planned it to be in black and white, but um, to the level that it is now, the way Gene did it, that was not planned. I didn't really. When I connected with Gene, I knew he was a great artist, but I had no idea that his grayscaling work was so amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I still every time I look at it, I'm like, that's dope. It's so amazing. Um, so you recently won 4 Glyph Awards. Congratulations for Crescent City Monsters. And you've enjoyed a lot of success with this series. What's the best piece of advice that you've been given?
Um, let's see. I've gotten a lot of good advice. Trying to think about the best advice that I've been given. Um, Actually, it's a it's an advice. It's not really an advice, but it's a I think a saying that they attribute to Steve Jobs. It says I think I might be switching the order around, but stay foolish, stay hungry.
Mm,
That's the best advice. And the way I interpret that is staying hungry, meaning that you're always looking for um, to take the next step to elevate yourself and the thing that you're working on. That you're always pushing yourself, and staying foolish means that just taking chances. Even when you don't have to. Um, you're taking chances. So that's how I interpret it. Um, and I guess that's the best advice. that,
that's great advice. I mean, it's one of my favorites too. So always trying to improve upon what you've done and how can I take this further. It's one of the things that's always in the back of my mind, especially because like I'm generally not a risk taking person. I'm more risk averse normally, but like creative projects allow you to be take more risk because it's yours, and there is it's yours, it's your voice, it's your story, and there's nothing to really, I don't know, like nothing to compare it against, right? It's just what how far you want to push yourself with what you create. So I absolutely love that.
oh, actually, and there's one more thing too. That so I heard Todd McFarlane said this, and this was a good point. He was talking. He said, as a creator, you shouldn't really be afraid to to end up creating something that's horrible. Because he was saying, look, he was working on Spawn and he has all these issues. He's like, not all his issues are gonna be great, you know. And but he's like, but that's okay because your fans will stick with you because they're looking at the body of work, right? They're not looking at like, oh, he's done like 50 issues, and oh man, he sucks because issues 18 through 24 was horrible. You know what I mean? Fans don't look at it that way. They look at the whole body of work. So, don't be discouraged if like along the way you stumble or people just don't get what you're doing.
Right.
Your fans will look at your whole body of work. So you shouldn't even worry about that. And I take a lot of I kind of like musicians. I kind of study, not study, but I kind of observe the way they kind of work too. Because when you look at musicians, they usually they'll create an album and they'll have a sound to it, and it's great. People love it. They're like, oh wow, that album was amazing. It's a classic. And then they most of the times the musicians, they don't stick with that same sound on like the next album. They switch it up, and it throws a lot of their fans off because the fans are like, oh man, this doesn't sound like the previous one. But most musicians, and they do that because they they realize that they need to change and evolve. They're artists, so they don't want to do the same thing. So even if at the cost of disappointing people, they rather grow as artists and experiment and try new things. And I think that's the same thing with comic book creators too, or just any artist. That's the approach that you should take. Your sophomore album might not be the big hit that the first album was, but that's okay though.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. One more question from Morgan Iverson. Since you love The Walking Dead, who's your favorite villain, and is there a character like them in Crescent City?
So what issue did I stop at? Because I'm not really up to date on the villains of The Walking Dead. The two villains that I know of was the mayor and Negan. After that, after Negan, after Negan was dethroned, I didn't really catch up with The Walking Dead. So, but Negan definitely was my favorite villain. He's just a crazy guy. I'm not sure what they've done with him because, like I said, I haven't really kept up with. I think the last issue I probably read was like something like maybe 80 or something like that. But so I haven't seen what they've done to him. But Negan was just a really interesting character. The TV series did a good job at kind of translating Negan. They did a real good job. The first season of Crescent City, not of The Walking Dead, to me sucked, but it was because it just didn't reflect the more of the comic. But as the series went on, it got way better. The second season was better than the first, and then so on. But yeah, Negan was like my favorite villain, I would say.
That's awesome. And then the second part of the question was, is there a character like him in Crescent City?
No, not in Crescent City, but I would love to make a character similar to him. I do have one similar to him that I want that I have in my head. It's a character that for a story that I'm thinking of. I really want to create a story on Harriet Tubman.
Oh yeah.
So this character that I'm thinking of is would be her arch nemesis, and it's kind of similar to Negan, but that's a story that I'm just working on. It's not really hasn't really happened, so
Gotcha.
Don't get too excited.
It's funny that you mentioned Harriet Tubman because I know I'm late to the party, but I was watching Underground, and There's a slave catcher in that one. What's her name? Patty something. Oh my god, I can't stand that. I can't stand her. She does a very good job of portraying that role. When you said like an arch nemesis to her, I'm like, somebody like that. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So we're running. I think this hour went by really quickly. So for those listeners and viewers who would like to pick up a copy of Crescent City Monsters, where can they do that? And what is the best method for folks to find and follow you online?
Well, the best way right now is I recommend just backing the Kickstarter. So can I post the URL on
Yeah,
the
definitely.
chat?
Please
So
do.
I'm gonna do that.
I should have let's see. Let me see if I can pull it up and put it in the chat too. Morgan, can you post it in the chat if you have it up by chance? Oh, here we go. Let's see. Let's see. Yay, there. All right, guys, we're posting the link where you can go and learn more about Crescent City Monsters. Back it, please. Back it. It's. I promise, I will
Yeah,
not
it's
do you wrong. You need this book.
yeah, this is the biggest Kickstarter that we've ever done. Right now, we're raising the most money we've ever raised. Currently, we're over 17,000. Our next Kickstarter goal is a well, our next Kickstarter stretch goal is going to be 21,000. The we already hit the first one, which is a collaboration with Keith Cross and myself with his book Day Black. We're gonna do a crossover with Crescent City Monsters and Day Black and his character Merce. I'm a big fan of Keith Cross's Day Black and Merce. So his vampire and Jonas is going to take place in 1963. So that's one story that that's going to go back to that era. And so I'm excited about that. And then the next stretch goal is going to be another crossover, but this time with Greg Anderson Elise. We're gonna do an Isnana and Crescent City Monsters crossover. Um, so I'm trying to keep like in the supernatural realm. So
Yeah.
and these two characters are in that supernatural realm, and so I think it's the synergies between those characters and the world is going to be awesome. So I'm excited about the artists that we have for both stories. It's gonna be great. So and hopefully if we reach the third stretch goal, which is at 27,000, we're gonna actually make a book. So everybody who pledges at the physical tier will actually get an extra book to their tier. So and the book will be um, those two stories in one book. So I'm excited about that. I hope we reach that 27,000. It'd be dope because I'd really want to give everybody who backed us at a physical tier that free book. So I'm super excited about that.
So am I, because I'm so glad that I found out about this stretch goal because I didn't know about Day Black, and when you wrote the description, I was like, oh, that's another book that I need. So yes, let's get him to this goal.
Oh yeah. Keith Cross, big fan of his. He's also a tattoo artist. He says he's retired. So you could kind of see in his artwork too. He's got that
Yeah,
tattoo artwork kind of style, which I love.
that's definitely. I'm really excited about that. Got some comments here. Morgan's like, "Yo, a crossover with Isnana will be insane." Man, I'm hiring you and Greg for my Kickstarter for Harlem. Yes, I absolutely love all the synergy I'm seeing in the community right now. It's really cool. Um, Mike and I are supposed to be working on something. I've been so crazy busy that I haven't had time to get back to him. But Mike, I'm coming this weekend. We're doing this. So, uh, but yeah, so back Newton's Kickstarter. The link is in the chat. You should be able to find it. I will also post up some stuff when we end the video, and you can also find it in the comments and in the description below. We want to thank Newton for coming on and giving us some of his time tonight. We wish him all the best with everything that he is doing. And let's get this stretch goal. We are at 17,000, I think about 500 right now. Let me check this out.
Yeah, let me see.
Let me pull it up real quick so people can kind of see.
17,637.
Let me see if I can.
Yeah, so we're pretty close. Well, we're close to the 21,000. We're close enough. We're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there. We are getting there.
Yeah, I think it will definitely happen. The sooner the better too, because I really want the stretch goals I have planned are all about the story and the books. So I want this Kickstarter to introduce stretch goals that have that either raise the quality of the books or introduce more stories. So that's what I want to do. And the more funding we get, the more I could do with the stories and the books.
Absolutely. So I love all the art, the pages that you chose for this. It's amazing. Let me find the trying to see where the stretch goal part is.
Oh yeah, I didn't update the stretch goals on the page itself. It's in the updates.
Okay, got it. Oh, let me click there. Ooh, coffee table book. Here we go. So yeah, stretch goal, which we passed that one, 16K, boom. And then this is the one, Day Black. I'm excited about this one.
Day Black.
If I got this print on the right, I love that one. And then the next one, this is the one we're going for, everybody. Crossover with Isnana, which is another project that's actually on Kickstarter right now. So go ahead and throw some support to.
Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention one other thing. So Greg and I also doing this thing where if you back both projects up, Greg is going to send you a free print of the crossover between the crossover characters. So
yes, I'm a backer of both. Woo-hoo.
Yeah, so just if you back both, just send us both of us a note, so we put you on the list of people who get the free print because you back both Kickstarters.
Awesome sauce.
Yeah,
come on, guys. We got such amazing art here, amazing stories, and I mean, look at it. How can you not back that? How? All right, let me check if we got any more questions. Oh, I think that's it. So, again, thank you guys so much for joining the Moana Nui podcast. I really appreciate you hanging out with us. Thank you, Newton, again, for being here and being a guest and just sharing your dope creativity with the world. If you would like to learn more about the Moana Nui podcast, please check out our website, www.moanamcadams.com. You can find out everything there. And follow us on social media. Look up Dream Fury Comics on Facebook and Instagram. And for myself, you can follow me at the Real Life Moana, both on Instagram and again, my website, www.moanamcadams.com. So with that, I hope everybody is safe and healthy. Take care, wear your mask, wash your hands, stay 6 feet away, and let's kick COVID in the butt. All right. Take care, everybody.
bye guys.
Till next time. Bye-bye. Oops.